I'm going to go into, I guess, a typical deep plant medicine dive. It's going to be centered around ayahuasca and then psilocybin. I will say, now the ayahuasca I think is very specific to the, not 100%, but I think the dosages and amounts can vary. So there's not as much of a hard and fast rule. But for psilocybin, in order to have a journey, in other words, in order to have an experience that will be meaningful, you probably need to do somewhere between 5 and 8 grams. So just as a reference. A second thing I want to say is that throughout this entire, the 2.5 years I did participate, it was always done mindfully, always done with the intention of open my heart to joy and or help me be my highest self or brightest light. It was always done in a sacred space, very safe, wasn't reckless. Doesn't mean you have to have this massive structure, but you do have to do this work if you're going to. You have to take it very seriously and do it in a sacred space and do it, have it be administered and monitored, and the process ran, whether it's, through smells and music and drumming and chanting, and sometimes just anyway, lots of different modes, right? But anyway, I always had an intent, and I always took the ceremonies serious, meaning that I would usually do them, 3 or 4 days in a row and learn from each one and build. Until, I received sort of the work till the next, or the, whatever that was. So anyway, it would take many forms, but there would be a lot of information or knowing changes, all kinds of things that I would have to work on. And then the next time it came around, I would either dig deeper in or move to something different, or get slapped around by the medicine and say, hey, we're not doing the work. So it's the integration of the medicine that is critical. And if it moves from use, meaning in a ceremonial, preferably done, on the high holy days, so that the energy is with us, the solstices and equinoxes and full moons, etc. But if it's done mindfully, with intention, that's really at the heart. You really take it seriously. This is not something that is just willy-nilly, or it's something that you just keep doing over and over and over again. When it moves to that place of abuse, the energy drops into this 3D, and you're now into a substance abuse, if that makes sense. And it just is. And the same with cannabis, by the way. So, alcohol's poison. That's why they call it poison. Sorry, but alcohol's poison. Definitely poisoning on your system. So anyway, it's important. I'm sorry to talk about that, but it's important. So a typical journey would be something like this. And I'm not going to get into the preparation of or any of the stuff after, just the journey itself after consuming the medicine. It would typically be laying down, and they had music such as I have always playing on. Or there would be always some type of a drumming or some type of just a small chant, some shakers. So it's now I'm talking about the ones mainly in the U.S., not the one in Peru. The one in Peru was quite, not quite different, similar, but very different from the standpoint of as wasn't westernized at all. Didn't have music. Involved a lot more people. You know, we're just not used to really being that attentive. Believe it or not, I don't think so. Lots of use of the scents and feathers. So anyway, that was some of the uniqueness, but they did not have Western medicine. There was some chanting. That's what it was, some chanting, and just humming and chanting by the shamans and some of the ladies, but not loud and just in the background. So there's usually music going on, or some type of rhythm or something going on. And if it's done intentfully, and I think the Native Americans and certainly South Americans have this probably down well, where probably Africa as well too, where they use beats and rhythms while you're on the medicine to move energy. And so the background music or chanting or whatever is really important. To me, it's important. And then, you know, you're always apprehensive. So I'll just regress just a second. So you have a deep intention, you sit with that, you know that, you take the medicine and you wait. Now, I would say both of them take a good, usually like 20 minutes to set in, 20 to 30. And then you start to feel it come on, the sensation. Now, I don't know how to answer this question. That the sensations you get, is that a heightening of the sensations we have to feel that energy, or are we moving sort of out of this time and space to a higher where you see more, you know more? Does that make sense? So I don't understand if the medicine is that if you become just more sensitized with what you are, or you're because you're not really moving, you're not lifting or doing anything. So it's not that the physical senses are involved, but the energetic, I guess, senses. That's the best way I can describe it. So that you can understand and hear and see these things, or are you sort of moving out of your mental state now, your physical beingness, your brain, that is, and being your higher self? And now that I'm talking about it, I think that's more it. I think that is more it. So obviously that state is very different. And I'm going to liken it to this. Just say, for example, we couldn't hear. Just say us humans on Earth couldn't hear. We just led our lives, and then all of a sudden, you could. Well, it would be pretty odd, right? I mean, no matter how you tried to talk yourself into, let's say they were going to broadcast of, hey, guess what? Something's going to turn on whatever date, and March 3rd, and at that point, guess what? We're all going to be able to hear her, And you're writing all this down, and people are like, well, I don't even know what that is, right? But okay, I guess, whatever that is. And then all of a sudden, March 3rd comes, and all of a sudden everybody can hear, and there's all this chaos. It would feel very different. Now you get settled into it, right? It would take some time. Well, that's what the plant medicine, as it comes on, starts to feel like. You start to have this sensation that you've never felt before. And it can put you into a worrying state because it's odd. That's why, though, just resting with this before you ever think about it and do it, and truly understand what you're doing so that you can be prepared, even mentally, because it's not as though you pass out. It's not, you're here, you're under a very heavy intoxication, but you're present, altered but present. So you feel the sensation come on, and you learn to sit with it, and you learn to be in peace with it. Sometimes that takes a little bit. What would then begin to happen is things would start, maybe filtering through. Now, during this whole time, I would try to lay as still as possible, except for when I, did go do all the times in the bathroom and stuff. But that was sort of a still purging of the hard drive and all that stuff. But still same kind of process. I would lay there, and then the knowings would start coming. Well, actually, I think I'll incorporate that. I could go both ways with it. So, anyway, so for the first year, as the medicines start to take place, and I could clear my mental space, I was getting good at, not getting distracted and think about worldly things. Just be, just keep saying, my heart for joy, or help me be my highest self. That was my mantra and focus. Well, then things would usually start to come. And for the first year, the dialogue was, it was more, how do I say this? For me, it was sort of lecturing. Now, you got to remember, I asked to know truth through all this. So, that I asked for all of it. So I was going to get all of it. And so for the first year, it was more, not quite lecture, but it was just very straight and forward, because it was dealing with human stuff. Does that make sense? So it was dealing with the ego and the layers that I put on. And even though I had purged, right, my energy by being sacrificed in Peru, I still had the ego, the hard drive that I now. So my soul's clear, my heart's clear, the gateway's open. I just the one thing the medicine does not do, it doesn't erase the hard drive, the ego hard drive that you've layered all these judgments and limitations and biases and the lying and lying, cheating, stealing, and all this shit, right? All this stuff that we do. I'm going to say I do. There's not. I know no one else is involved in any of that. So these knowings start coming in, and for the first year I would go to the bathroom and I would have these spit ups and, you know, small throw-ups, but we never ate. You fast before this. Well, this fall you fast for a day. That really helps deepen the experience without a doubt. You want to go deep. You don't want to. This is not anything to probably. If you want to tippy toe into it, then you're not sure. Does that make sense? You need to be sure. There's something you need to say. Listen, I'm not scared of the experience. I understand we're in a virtual reality. This is a slice of that. You know, that's all this is. It's just going to have these odd sensations and potentially visions and dialogue where you've never had dialogue like before. So I would go to the bathroom and spit up these knowings. You know, I something, you know, that I thought about this or you know, that happened, or I'm still holding on to. I get rid of it. Then I used to stare in the mirror a lot and get incredible visions. The second year, I wouldn't move at all. I would just lay there, and it became, now for that second year, it was dealing with more things that I've mentioned in the other videos, was dealing more with dissecting how I've experienced my life and led my life in this past 3 months before the next sessions. And then it would be a deep dive into areas, and it was awesome because it was usually, believe it or not, the medicine would pick things such as I thought I was doing well in something, but then the truth be known that I really wasn't, or I was on the wrong track. Does that make sense? So and so it was helping me sort of navigate now this ego, you know, that's trying to get balanced with spirit and sort of bring these two back into alignment and push in some areas and, you know, just completely wipe others away. So I would just have these, again, the first year there was physicalness attached to it, throwing stuff up, looking in the mirror, because I think at that point I'm still at the human and the medicine stage. Does that make sense? I still want to be I was functioning, but just altered. Whereas I think the second, and so I held on to some of that physicalness, which, you know, maybe I needed. Maybe that's what I needed to do. Not many people did, but it just somehow served me. And versus the second year where it was just very still and all internal. And so I would just have these deep dives into just these dialogues of, you know, here's what happened. Well, let's explain, let's go through this. And there would be knowings and visions. I might be able to feel it from that person's perspective. There's a lot of that if you get into the details about and let's listen, folks, our life here is all about relationships. It's all about choices in the relationships that we're presented with. I mean, that's what life is. And so it gets deep into things like relationships with others, or your relationships with maybe drugs or alcohol, or your relationships with things like, let's say, cars, or your relationship with money, and so it's all, and then it's choices about that, and then the fallout. So what the medicine looks at when you give it license, because remember, you're not going in and saying, hey, should I take this job or that job? That's a waste of time. That's a waste of time. If you're going to go big, go big. If as I've said before in the past, when I asked to have my heart open to joy, open my heart to joy, it was usually when I was feeling stuck, meaning I didn't feel like I was making progress, or things weren't going as planned, or I feel I regressed, or something like that. So I wanted to clear that first. Once I get to that space, and I'm, now going into the sessions, which was probably the second year, where I had practiced and things, I'm doing the work and doing it well, and now it's time to advance. So the conversations were just, I don't know how to describe it. A lot of times I didn't have any visuals, or very, very, very little. Sometimes I would have some figures in the distance, or sometimes I could maybe see some people if I was talking about somebody specific, and maybe see some things, but it was just more this overall knowing. It seemed then that after the work was done, and that always went this way, it sort of always went with, take the medicine, have the intention, take the medicine, have the bit of apprehensive, and, some butterflies, and if you don't have that, and I shouldn't say apprehensive, you just, you don't want to be apprehensive, you want to be ready and available and not apprehensive, but I don't know how to say it. Just be willing to listen deeply to what's said. So after these sort of the lessons, and so you take the medicine, have this apprehension, you sort of get past that, you settle in, get comfortable, focus on breathing, and then just sort of let the music take you, or the rhythm, or whatever it is. Whatever sound there is, like I said, there will always be something rhythmic, something. Let that just take you. Let that be your guide. So after the learning, then, I would always have these amazing experiences, just being in absolute darkness with nothing but other than the sound coming through, and I was in such sync with that music that's even without that, like during the pauses, I don't know how to describe it, but it's bliss, because there's no noise, and there's nothing in the mind, because I believe at that point I'm detached, I guess, from the mind itself, where yes, I can feel my senses a little bit about how I'm laying down, but that's very, very dulled, and that's it. And now I'm focusing on trying to be still. Does that make sense? I mean, as soon as I open my eyes, of course, I can see everything. So I'm consciously trying to deepen this state all the way so that I remove my senses from creating any more interference than absolutely necessary with the ego. Right? I sort of want the ego out of this as far as I can. I want it to keep me safe, and it's doing an awesome job while I'm laying there, very still, almost looking like I'm dead. So,
Sorry, phone ring.
So the music is just sort of becomes everything at that point, meaning that my senses are very dulled, my eyes are closed, always have eye shades on. Oh, that was awesome. They always recommend that. It was awesome. Always had my own, actually, I always took my own blanket. I had this wool blanket. I bought a wool blanket specifically for the ceremonies. And my own pillow. I know it sounds crazy, but they always recommend that. So if you're traveling to do that, it's comforting. Does that make sense? I know it doesn't sound like much. When you're on the medicine, it's a lot. Because what's cool is that becomes the most important thing. Does that make sense? You're detached from this place. You're not worried about a car payment. You're not stressing over this or that. Hopefully, once you, I mean, again, as long as you have the best intention or that big intention. If you have a limiting intention of, should I do this or that, in this specific relationship, well, you get a pretty nasty experience that's going to drive, a bunch of direct stuff that's, probably not going to be, it's just not going to be worth the effort. Sorry. So, when you're asking for the big, you can get into this space of just nothingness. You can access this beyond this experience space to really feel what you are outside of this realm. Now, for me, it's been, my gosh, it was 2018. At the last time, and I can't do it anymore, by the way. I was told during my last ceremony that if I am now at the point I've got everything I need, and if I do the deep plant medicine again, I'll revert back. So it's been 7.5 years. It has been amazing. And to be able to sit in that space and now to be able to find that same space here, anyway, so sitting with the medicine in this space, sometimes she'll come in. It's always a she. Both are she's. Now, I will tell you that they are, psilocybin and ayahuasca are a little bit different. Ayahuasca, in my opinion, is more direct, but in just such a whole embracing way. I can't describe it. Whereas the psilocybin can get a little bit more mental. To me, it seems like it can take more paths, and it does communicate, but it's not as clear, it's not as rich, it's not as deep. I shouldn't say as deep. I'm not going to say that. It's just a different sensation, different feel. They both have the same pattern. They do the same thing, but I should probably explain the psilocybin just a little more. It is more. I seemed as though I questioned the dialogue that I was having in my experience more on psilocybin than ayahuasca, if that makes sense. Ayahuasca seems to put you into this space of, once you accept where you are, it's almost like you're sitting in a classroom. That's the best way I can describe it. And so you just sort of really take this comfortable seat, and it's not stressful, and you sort of know what's coming. You know there's going to be a lecture and a dialogue, and you know it's not bad. And the mother ayahuasca that's teaching in front of you, she's just this beautiful lady, right? She's just amazing. Yeah, she's just this amazing, just beautiful woman that's just you know, bringing out all this knowing. And so you don't have a speaking, but you have this, that's how it feels. If I can, you can sense her in front of you or above you. So yeah, whereas the psilocybin is the dialogue is there, but you don't have that. I don't have that strong of presence of something, of an energy source. It's a little bit more scattered, and so maybe that's why the messages I question. But they're both, in my opinion, equally effective. Then it takes, you know, so I'm going to go back to music and just being in the space. It just, your heart just gets filled, because when you're in that void, you start thinking about all the things that you do have, like your blanket and your pillow, which become your absolute prized possession, because that's all that matters at that time. It helps you experience this being present, because now as you start to enjoy the experience, or you know, sort of start to come out of it a bit, and you're starting to come back into now melding your higher self into the physical realm, which again, I'm not sure if you're dropping into or your senses are getting desensitized and you're not sensing that. But your pillow and your blanket, oh my gosh, that's all that matters. And I would encourage everybody to hold that thought permanently, because now you start to come out of the medicine. And I would say the journeys last, you know, usually the deep part is probably about 4 hours. So, you know, maybe a good hour getting in, and then a good, I'd say 3 to 4, no, I'd say 4 hours. A good 4 hours of deep. That's again the learnings and the knowings, and then the just wonderful thoughts and integration and reflecting and sitting in that space before starting to drop into. So this pillow and this blanket, anyway, we come out of it, and now you're probably a good 6 hours, no, it's a good 6 hours into it. Time to go to bed, and sometimes it's very difficult to fall asleep. Other times I would get up, stay up and talk with people. Early on I did. I'd say the first year I did, because I was still learning what this was all about. The second year it was more internal. And yeah, that was it. I would take notes immediately after for the main points, and got much better at it. And you can tell even my handwriting, because when I first did it, I was just, you know, I was so out of it. But as I got more experienced, I was more, you know, I had integrated the medicine more, and it was more. My physicalness could manage it much better. And so I would write down several, you know, the things I need to work on, or you know, whatever those things were, and then I worked on it. Now the medicine feeling effect, I'd say lasts for another good 24 hours. I mean, until you go to bed that night, that following night, you're still going to feel a little euphoria, a little different, because again, you're not all there yet. Everything's not been quite turned on, or is not sensitized or desensitized. So it takes a little bit to feel, back to normal. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know if that helps anybody, but they are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful teachers if you're willing to be a student. That means you drop the ego, have a big ask, and be ready to accept whatever comes your way. Give the medicine the license. It knows what the biggest bang for the buck is. Does that make sense? You think you do, but I promise you don't, more than likely. So go for the big ask. Don't be small. If you're going to do this, do it with intent. I feel sad because I experienced my first 10 years ago. I feel sad for the popularity of it, quite honestly. I think it's highly abused. I think it's doing probably more harm than good. If you're going to do this, be serious about it. I will also tell you, I truly feel I did it too much. I didn't pay enough attention or put enough work in between the sessions to be as serious. And so I'm the first one to admit that, now knowing. So if you do it with your whole heart, do it with your full intent, put passion into it, take what you get from it and go full on. And then go if you stuck or you're called to. But I wouldn't get into a routine, and I know these things fill up and all that, and I got it, I know it, but you'll find the right thing by having the right intent. Does that make sense? If it's needed, it will always be available if your intention is there. So have the right intention, ask for the big thing, get out of your own way, stop being a human. I'll tell you what, when you stop being a human, it feels a lot better. Oh God, feels a lot better. Peace.